So I've been working with the Red Komodo X for a little over a year now, and it's been an absolute joy moving into this camera from the Canon C70. And throughout this last year and some change, there's been this one camera accessory that stood out above the rest as my all-time favorite must-have necessity for my Komodo X, and even for the Red Raptor as well when I rent that camera. This one accessory just makes the camera rig so much smoother and cleaner and more versatile and just easier to use, and it just makes everything on set a lot quicker. And as you can tell from the title of this video, that accessory that I'm talking about is the Red DSMC3 7-inch monitor. So this right here is the Red DSMC3 monitor, and you can see that it's a Small HD and Red collab. This monitor is made for Red DSMC3 cameras, and it's rad because I love Small HD monitors just on my own. I've used the 702 Touch, the Cine 5. It's cool to see them collaborate, but also make a monitor that is designed for the Red ecosystem. And the one thing that sticks out on this monitor, besides the sick Red logo on the back of it, is the price tag. This thing comes in at a whopping $2,750, which I'm sure a lot of you gasped at that price tag, but I can assure you by the end of this video, if you're thinking about buying this monitor, you're going to think that it's worth every single penny, and it's going to make your workflow much smoother because, spoiler alert, I found that to be true for myself, and I absolutely love this thing, even though it costs an arm and a leg. So before we get into my experience and workflow with this monitor, let's go over the key features. This monitor features a 7-inch daylight viewable LCD panel that has 322 pixels per inch. It's a 1920 by 1200 resolution, 1250:1 contrast ratio. You can rotate this monitor 180 degrees through the bottom mount. There's a couple quarter 20 mounts on the top and right side for different rigging options. It features 1300 nits of brightness. It's a touchscreen camera control monitor with full Red control built in. It has a wide 100% DCI P3 color gamut. It has the Small HD Page OS software. It connects to the camera through the pogo pins through the DSMC3 base, and there's a locking USB-C video and power cable that's included in, giving you a really simple setup for it. And there's also two EXP ports on the monitor base. I don't know what those are for. Red has never announced anything about what those can do. I haven't had to use them. I don't know if those will ever be useful at some point. Alongside that, there are 4 M3 screws that you can mount your monitor hood to, and then there's also 4 shortcut buttons on the left side of the monitor that you could remap to any camera function that you could think of. And then there's also an SD card port for firmware upgrades and loading and LUTs. But the one main thing about this monitor, besides the price tag that stops people from buying it, is that it's proprietary to DSMC3 cameras. So it only works on the Komodo X, the Raptor VV and X, maybe Super 35, and then the Raptor XL, and then the X, and of course the new Z mount cameras. This monitor will not work on your Komodo OG, and it's another just like beating the dead horse of Red to the Komodo OG owners. Like, they're not really supporting them in a lot of these things, and this monitor, I feel, should be like the main reason why Komodo OG owners upgrade to the Komodo X, but we'll get into all that in a little bit. All right, so let's talk about how you actually mount and set up this monitor. So Red and Small HD came up with a really nifty and clever idea of how you connect this monitor to your camera. But essentially, you take the DSMC3 monitor base, it's a mouthful, and you just mount it onto your Komodo X or Raptor. And you can see that there's electrical pins that connect from the monitor base to your camera, and that allows for data and camera control and power to pass through from your camera to your monitor. And then you simply just pick the mount that you want for your monitor, and with the package, Red gives you a 15mm rod adapter that goes into the bottom of the monitor, and you mount that on, you pick exactly where you want it to go, and then you have to plug in your RMI cable, which is a Small HD proprietary USB-C style cable. And we'll get into the RMI cable in a second, but as you can see, like when you set this camera up with just the monitor and the base, like it is super clean. Like there is just one cable going from the base to the monitor, and you have video pass through, power pass through, camera control, and like you can legit control your camera from this monitor, which I think is just an absolutely lovely thing to have on set and just really on any job. But this cable is definitely a hit or miss for me. I wish the cable was stronger. Like USB-C cables like don't really feel like they could bend, and they're not really pliable. But like I'd rather have that than the alternative, which is running an SDI cable, a power cable, and then a camera control cable. So like this cleans it up so much, and I haven't had any issues over the last year or so with the durability of this RMI cable, but it's just expensive for what it is. And you can't use any other USB-C style cables. It has to be the red small HD RMI cable. And you'll notice that on the cable, it's branded small HD. I like putting like a little piece of red gaff tape on there on all my cables just to mark that these are RMI only, and for like my ACs and for anyone to not pull those to like transfer media and then end up taking those cables home. They're expensive at $100 a piece, and I don't want them to get lost in the shuffle. When you're connecting the RMI cable from the base to the monitor, make sure that you put your cable diagonally into the monitor. I think they did this to help prevent bending the cable, because when it's diagonally in, it's like further recessed in, whereas if it was sticking directly out of it, more the cable head is exposed. And then if you want to release the cable, simply just push the little quick release lever to the right, pull your cable out the same way diagonally, and rinse and repeat. And it's pretty straightforward. It's a little weird to get used to at first, but I tend to try to keep my RMI cables like in the same direction, where the side of the cable that's always plugged into the monitor always stays in the monitor, even when I like pull it off and like swap out cables. They just kind of bend a certain way, and I don't want to have them bending back and forth a lot. So keep that in mind. But yeah, it would have been sick for them to do like a true cableless design. But the one downside of that is that if your monitor breaks or if anything happens, you have to send the entire thing in. Whereas with this, like if my cable breaks, I'm out $100 versus almost $3,000. So yeah, it would have been nice to have like an SDI cable or have no cables, but I would take this any day because it's just so clean and streamlined, and like it really doesn't get in the way at all, especially the 10-inch version. But the red DSMC3 base doesn't lock, and I did the LCD hinge upgrade, which makes like a metal housing, and I think the original plastic housing can lock, because in the manual it shows you plug it in and then you like rotate the cable. This, you can't do that, like it's firmly locked in. So I wish they would have like thought about that with the hinge upgrade and made that locking, so then like you're not really worried about your port like falling out. But even if it falls out, like you're not going to be losing your data or anything, because you still have your camera and the LCD screen there. So it's not the biggest deal, but that's just like one thing that I would have wished, and that would have been really nice. And the cool thing about this monitor base is that there are pins on top for a run stop accessory to pass through and control your camera. So you can either use the red outrigger handle or the red top handles. I prefer the red top handle because like it's just like really short and streamlined. Whereas with the outrigger, like you have to mount it on top, but then more often than not, you need a top handle. So then you have to do a NATO plate and then a handle. I'd rather just run this top handle, and like it works great. It's comfy. And then I just have my own side handles, like the wing grips or my Casbah handles. Like it just depends on the rig that I'm running. But more often than not, I would rather run it like this than with the outrigger handle and then have like a tall top handle. Having that pass through is really nice because like I can like control the camera and run stop it with this handle, and it keeps it really clean and easy. And then there's also a little accessory that Red makes that moves the 15mm rod up a little bit more, and you can kind of adjust it. It's like 180 degrees. Like you can put your monitor mount really anywhere, and it just lifts up the monitor. So if you're doing tripod work, it's in a better viewing angle than down here on this little guy. I wish you could run all three, like the red outrigger and the top handle, but for some reason you can't. So my choice is the top handle. So before we get further along in my experience and overall thoughts about this monitor, I quickly want to talk about my history with external monitors. And you might have already heard a little bit of this if you watched my previous videos about why I bought the Komodo X, moving from the Canon C70. And it essentially came down to just wanting a really clean, minimal rigging experience at any stage of the rigging build, from minimal to mid-tier to high-level stuff. With the Canon C70, anytime I threw on an external monitor, I always needed LPE6 batteries or a V-mount, and then I had to run HDMI and then a power cable, and it just wasn't really the cleanest experience. Like, yeah, I got the job done, but I just wanted something a lot cleaner. And I know with Alexas and other high-end cinema cameras, like that's not really a reality, but for me as a solo operator, having a camera rig like this where I can show up to a job and have this be super clean and minimal, like that adds so much value to my workflow. And then being able to expand on top of this while running this monitor with just one cable, it just makes rigging up and down so much smoother. And when you're looking at the FX3 and the Canon C70 and the FX6, if you're running an external monitor, you have power and video. And then if you're looking at different monitors other than the red monitor, you have to do power, SDI, and then camera control. So like now you're fumbling through SDI protocol, which I made a video about that, link down below. It's super easy, but it's still something that is just added into your workflow and like something you have to think about. And then having SDI running from camera to monitor, power running from V-mount to monitor, and the camera control running from camera to monitor. Like I would be back to square one with my Canon C70 and having to reroute cables, which adds more time and intent with rigging. Whereas with this, I know exactly where my RMI cable is going. I just have to decide, am I running this on the 15mm rods or if I'm running this on a camera monitor arm. The decision making is just way easier, it's cleaner to rig, and honestly I find that it works a lot nicer than even my Cine 5 and 702 touch that I was running on my FX3 and Canon C70. So yeah, that's where like I'm super picky about this. That might not be something that you're like fussy about, but I just didn't want to have that same C70 experience where I'm worrying about cables and rerouting those and keeping everything neat and clean, like in having to worry about DTAP ports being taken up for my monitor. I'd rather have those DTAP ports open for like a wireless transmitter or a wireless follow focus or really anything else that I could find that I could put on there. Like having this just makes life so much easier on the types of jobs that I'm on, and I could see a lot of people benefiting from it, especially the Komodo OG owners. Like you're stuck to that workflow of SDI and power, and then if you want camera control, like you have to think about that. And then I heard the camera control is pretty finicky, and if you don't want to pay for the camera control license, you have to control your camera through like the actual top LCD screen, which is fine, but it's just so much quicker and easier through the red monitor that I couldn't even imagine operating the Komodo X or Raptor without this monitor. It just makes it so smooth. So let's move on. Let's talk about the accessories that I picked up for this monitor. There's not too many, but there are like a few key things that I feel like everyone should pick up for it, just to make the overall experience a lot nicer. So first off, I got a screen protector from Small HD. It's pretty expensive for what it is. It's like 40 bucks, but as you can see, my screen protector already cracked in 2 spots. And thankfully it saved my monitor screen because I would have been really sad having the actual monitor get cracked. And then alongside that, we have the monitor hood. Again, expensive. It's 100 bucks, but it is so worth it. I ended up picking up the same kind of monitor hood for my Cine 5, and it's the ones that like screw into the bottom of your monitor and have like the little pogo pin things to like slot into the M3 holes on the top. I absolutely love monitor hoods, and I've been using the wooden camera universal monitor hood that's pretty popular. I had it for my 702 touch, and that thing slid around. It never was like fully flush with the monitor, and it was always like kind of crooked and like off to the side where it was covering part of the image. This is form fitted for the monitor. It slots in perfectly. It's a little weird to like screw in. You have to like definitely get it finessed properly, but once it's on, it's on. It adds enough coverage to be able to view everything during like high noon outdoors. I use it all the time when I'm outside, and it's one of those things where like it's worth every single penny. I couldn't imagine running like the universal one on here because everything's so sleek and there's really no ports to hold the universal sun hood in. So that's a bare necessity, I feel like, for this monitor. And the only bummer is that it like is really weird to like fold. It always like wants to like lift up. So if you have it stuffed away in a drawer, like if you're pulling your drawer out, it'll most likely get caught. So just put a rubber band around it and you're good to go. Alongside that, I did the hinge upgrade, which I briefly mentioned earlier in the video. And I like the hinge upgrade because it makes the actual mounting piece like metal. So now you can like crank down on your 15mm rod monitor adapter and have that peace of mind that it's not going to slip. And I've noticed that it's a lot nicer. And also they upgraded the actual 15mm rod like arm that goes into the monitor, and it's a lot easier to tighten down by yourself. I still will use a multi-tool sometimes to make sure that it's like fully tight. The only bummer I think is that it kills that lock-in USB-C adapter. Like I never tested it with the original plastic one, but in the manual it shows the original plastic one having that locking adapter. So that's an oversight on Red and Small HD. Like if they release a product that's plastic that like cracks when you like start like tightening down on it, like that's a huge miss. I just would have loved having that locking feature for that extra peace of mind, to where like I know that the entire like head and like the little extra part of the cable, like that's not going to snap or like get bent in any way. Like maybe they're smarter than I am and there's a reason why they didn't do it, but I did the upgrade a little while ago and it was really easy to DIY. You just have to be pretty careful. There's a video that Red released about how to do it by yourself, and like I've been happy with it. I haven't had any issues with it, but yeah, that locking port would have been pretty nice. Alongside that, I 100% recommend getting a handful extra RMI cables, and I know they're expensive at $100 a piece, but if that RMI cable goes out, which it's kind of fragile, like USB-C cables are kind of fragile, it's not like the most burly thing, but if that cable goes out, like you're out of luck. You can't just like swap out an HDMI cable or an SDI cable or like put a different, I guess you could put a different monitor on, but if you want to use that Red monitor, you need that RMI cable. So I recommend at least getting one more 10-inch, and the 10-inch is the one that comes with the monitor. So you'll have 2 for like this little minimal setup. And then I picked up the 18-inch, which is my preferred cable for when I do monitor arms, because it gives you just a little bit extra to play with. And then I also picked up the 39-inch just in case if I'm running a gimbal or if I'm renting my camera out and they're using a gimbal. You just need that extra length for gimbal rigging. And it could be like a severe fourth backup. If like all my other cables go lost or they get broken, then I'll just have to wrap this like really long cable around the rig, and then it'll be ridiculous, but at least it works. So it's nice having those extra RMI cables, but again, it's like the red tax. Like it's just kind of expensive, but like SDI cables are like $80 nowadays if you get good ones. So it's not the end of the world. And then the other accessory that I have for this monitor is just like a cloth covering for it. Anytime I toss this monitor in a backpack or if I put it in my doctor bag, I just like to cover it. So I swap between the Tenba like camera wraps and also the Bright Tangerine like little fabric wraps. And if you've ever purchased anything from Bright Tangerine, you'll notice this little fabric bag. I save all of these for just like my fragile accessories, and it's really nice for monitors because they just fit in really well and you can wrap them up pretty nicely. And I just love that they include these because they're really useful. So it's not like my main source of protection for the monitor, but it's just an extra little layer in case stuff gets bopped around, and it saves it from scratches, but it won't save it from like heavy drops. And then this one's kind of a bonus, but I 100% recommend getting a solid monitor arm. I prefer the Noga arm Cine Lock combo. I think it's the Noga arm medium, and then it comes with 2 Cine locks. It's expensive at $288. I would probably just buy the medium Noga arm and then 1 Cine lock or like a quick release adapter. I used to run both, but lately I've just been doing 1 Cine lock on camera and then the quarter 20 into my monitor. This monitor arm is super sturdy. It makes easy rig and Cine saddle operating a breeze. So it really just comes down to preference. I like having options, and sometimes I don't always want to run my monitor on that 15mm adapter that Small HD gives you. So it really just comes down to preference. I like having options depending on the rigging that I'm doing, and when I'm doing certain types of operating, I don't like running that red Small HD 15mm monitor adapter. I'd rather just throw it on a monitor arm, get in the right spot, and not really have to like worry about it too much. But yeah, this monitor doesn't really need much, even though like there's kind of a lot there for my accessories. At the bare minimum, get a couple extra RMI cables, get at least 1 18 and then an extra 10, maybe 2 10s if you're not really doing any monitor arm stuff. Get the sun hood. The sun hood is so nice. It's nice just like being able to mount the sun hood and not have to worry about it falling off ever, which I have to do with my wooden camera one. The Noga arm is great. You could find different options from Condor Blue and Mid 49, and I'm sure like there's other really solid monitor arms out there, but I've been a big fan of the Noga arms. Like they're really solid. And yeah, outside of that, like you don't really need much for it. Like it's a pretty simple monitor, and it's nice that like all of those things can pack down really small. And outside of the sun hood and the RMI cable, like I can use my Noga arm anywhere else. I can use the monitor case anywhere else. The hinge upgrade, like I'm stuck with. The monitor hood, I'm stuck with. There's a couple proprietary things. There's a couple not. It's not a big deal. I think anything to get the job done and make it easier and more reliable, it's worth every penny. Some may say it's not, but I say it's worth it. So let's move on into how I actually rig this monitor. So like I said, there's 2 different ways that I tend to go about it. It's either one, the 15mm rod monitor adapter, or the Noga arm. I stopped using my small rig cold shoe and 3/8 monitor mounts just because like they're not really comfy on this camera kit. And if anything, like I'm mounting it to the DSMC3 base with the 15mm rod adapter, or I'm throwing the 15mm adapter on my red top handle or Bright Tangerine top handle just to get the monitor up a little bit more and just have a little bit more leverage for tilting. So that's like my go-to for like a kit that's just super simple, run and gun. I'm not really doing Cine saddle or easy rig operating. I'm fully handheld or tripod. Like that is just super streamlined and clean, and it's not like a really tall setup by any means. But if I were to do easy rig and Cine saddle stuff where like the camera's more at like an angle to me, like you can't really tilt this monitor. Like you can, but then it's like tilted like diagonally, and like that's not comfy at all. So for those scenarios, I like using the Noga arm. I'll throw the quick release kind of really anywhere on my top handle, wherever's comfiest, sometimes on the side, sometimes on the front. And then with that Noga arm, I'm now able to move the monitor around easily because one, it's sturdy and it's not going to fall even if you loosen it a tiny bit. So now like if I have one hand on camera, I can still move and position the monitor to where it needs to be. And like now it just makes it a lot nicer, like where I don't have to like bend my neck looking around the easy rig cable or have to like look down the Cine saddle to see exactly what I'm shooting. Like it's just directly in my face, and it is honestly one of my new favorite ways to operate with this Red monitor. But yeah, when I'm using the Noga arm, I'm only using one of the Cine locks. I used to use the Cine locks on the monitor as well, but that just got to be a little bulky and like kind of unnecessary. So sometimes I'll throw the quarter 20 on the Noga arm underneath, and like that really just depends on like how I'm rigging it and positioning it. Sometimes if I need the monitor out farther, like to the side, I'll mount the quarter 20 into the side of the monitor, and that actually works pretty well. And even though there's like the center of gravity is off from like the actual arm, like it's still really sturdy and it works out pretty well. But with those scenarios, I always use the 18-inch RMI cable. The 10-inch got to be a little too tight to where it's a little worrisome that it was bending at the connection on the base. So when you're using the 18-inch, you will have extra RMI cable, which is natural, but there are scenarios where you could bend the port a little bit. And to keep the RMI cable clean and out of the way and off of your LCD screen, I like using the wing grip, or like I'll throw a little NATO rail on the side of the camera and I'll throw a sprig on there and I'll just get the RMI cable fed right through it. So then it's always like directly straight coming out of the base, and it's not like immediately bending and turning. So that just kind of helps preserve like the integrity of the end of the cable and also the port as well. And I haven't tried the gimbal setup yet, but there's tons of different ways to mount a monitor to a gimbal or a gimbal ring, and like it just really depends. But for that scenario, I'd use the 39-inch RMI just because you need that extra space and leeway, especially as you like move the gimbal arm around. One thing to note about using top handles with this DSMC3 monitor is that if you're using like the bright tangerine, which like adjusts forward and backwards, there's a chance that if you tilt the monitor the wrong way, you're putting it straight through the top handle and like you're gonna destroy it. Whereas with the Red top handle, you can either move this little piece to the back and have like an extra grip on the back, and now you have like full leeway to like move it up and down. And you still can really only go to here, but with this setup, like if I move it up, it barely, like it's not gonna touch the bottom. Like you barely have space for it. And it's like, that's not the end of the world to like tilt up to. So if I need to use a different top handle, I'll use the Bright Tangerine Raptor 15mm adapter that goes into the top handle. So then like it's completely out of the way from getting knocked in and broken from the top handle if I end up tilting it the wrong way. So the only bummer with that is that it brings the monitor a lot higher up on the rig, which is fine, but I just really prefer like how low profile this is. Like this is just my go-to for a lot of the scenarios, but I'll use the Bright Tangerine top handle primarily for easy rig operating. But if I'm doing that, I have full leeway to move it back and forth to get the balance proper. And because I'm using the Noga arm on it, like it's attached to the top handle. So no matter if I move it forward or backwards, the monitor is still safe. It's just only when you're running it on the actual base with a different top handle, that's when it can get a little sketchy. All right, so let's get into the menu and customization of this monitor. With this monitor, you have access to two different types of menus, which is really cool. You have the built-in Red menu, and then you have the built-in Small HD Page OS menu. And it's really cool having both of these because like a lot of people are familiar with the Small HD menus, and there's a lot you can do with that. But I feel like this works better with this monitor because it's going through the RMI cable into the base plate, and it just talks better with the camera that I found. If I'm doing stuff with the FX3 or C70, I'm not really using the camera tools on the Small HD monitor because it's like referencing the HDMI image. For some reason, it feels like it's more accurate with this camera. That might be placebo. I might have like Stockholm syndrome with the Red and Small HD, but it feels different in that front. But yeah, to access the Small HD menu, you just can tap the screen. You can create your different pages, you can add your different features and shortcuts that you want, and then if you want to go into the actual settings, you can just swipe over. And it's cool because it's like a hybrid of the Red and Small HD menus where there's a handful of different features in there that are like kind of Red specific, or you can like do the shortcuts on the side of the monitor and it can read the actual functions from the camera. So it's a really cool blend of the two, and it's just been a joy to get the right camera settings, customize my tools, and just make everything extremely streamlined. And then to access the Red menu, you can just tap any of the icons on screen. You have your ISO, white balance, iris, shutter angle, you have your codecs, you have time code, you have so many different things on the heads-up display at pretty much a one-click access to where like you don't really have to dive into the actual menu on the Komodo or Raptor. And this is really nice for the Raptor users because the LCD screen on the Raptor is on the AC side. So if you're solo operating that, it's like really weird to like go around and like try to like adjust the menu from the side. Whereas with this monitor, you can just have everything at your fingertips and adjust anything you need. And it's just really streamlined and snappy and quick. And it hasn't been laggy at all. And it's just been like the best monitor experience that I've had compared to even the other small HDs that I've used in the past. And then what's cool with this monitor is that there's loads of customization. You of course have the customization with the pages and the shortcuts on those different pages, like what normal small HD monitors do. But there's also 4 customizable buttons on the top left side of the monitor, which I use every single time when I'm on set. I like routing my LUT or different guides or center guide, peaking, false color. Like I'll rotate through all of those just really depending on how I'm feeling or how I'm operating. I use those in conjunction with the shortcuts on the actual Komodo. So with the 2 record buttons, you can half press those and have different shortcuts. So lately I've been doing the right power button half press to be my log LUT. So for Rec 709 log, toggling that on and off. And then the front record button, I do that as my top LCD or the DSMC3 monitor magnify. So if I need to punch in and see if I'm in focus, easy peasy, I have that right there. But when you're looking at the monitor, like being able to have all of your tools there and being able to see your color space, your format, your frame rate, how much media you have left, your histogram, and also the traffic lights, like all that there is just so lovely. It's easy to see your battery life. You can do playback through there. And if you want to dive into the actual full menus, there's a button on the top left. You'll see like the 3 little bars. And through this menu, you can go through every single setting that you could find on the body of the camera just through this little menu. So it's made it to where I use the monitor for like 99% of the time. It's just such a seamless pairing from small HD and Red to where like it pretty much makes the on-camera menus and screens completely useless, but they are nice to have just kind of depending on how you're feeling and what your preferences are. And alongside that, one of my other favorite features about this monitor is that there's an extra run stop button on the monitor. So if I'm doing any kind of easy rig or cine saddle operating, and if I don't have easy access to the side run stops or my top handle run stop, or if I'm using the bright tangerine top handle that doesn't do a run stop, it's so nice to have my monitor right in front of me because it normally is on a Noga arm, and I can just tap the bottom right of the screen and I could start and stop recording. This makes life so much easier, and I've seen other cameras kind of do this, but this is implemented so well, and it's so quick to go from start stop to playback or to change my settings like at a moment's notice. And especially for those times where like I am easy rig operating or cine saddle operating, like I'm using that button almost for every take. Unless I'm going true handheld, I'll probably just like use my thumb to tap the start stop on the LCD screen, or I'll use the one on the side. But like it's just so much faster using the monitor, and I absolutely love it. I don't know what else to say about it. It's sick. I use it all the time, and I'm really glad that it's there. But yeah, I am just really impressed with this monitor. It is super seamless. I love that everything is going through the RMI cable to the base. I can customize my SDI out for my transmitter, so it's nice to know that like I can have all the heads-up display and functions that I need as a DP and camera operator. And then when I'm running a wireless transmitter, I can have a clean feed or set up certain features to be shown through the SDI. Whereas with other cameras, you'd have to loop out through your external monitor and then loop into the transmitter, and it gets really funky with that. So it's nice to have my 709 image punched through. Sometimes I'll throw guides on there. There's no peaking or false color. Like on different cameras, I'll toggle false color and client will be like, what was that? Like, why does that look funny? Or if I'll like toggle the LUT, they'll ask why it's washed out. Having that SDI freed up and just to be a transmitter SDI has made it so much nicer because I just take care of my clients and my directors, and I don't want to confuse them with like different tools that pop up on camera. All right, so moving on into the firmware updates. One of the coolest things about the Red camera and even this monitor is that you can update the firmware through Wi-Fi. Of course, you could do it through the SD card and CF Express card, but doing it over Wi-Fi is super safe, it's quick, and it's just extremely easy. It's cool that Red and Small HD have given so much support for this monitor, and they've just made it so much better over the years. And I'll leave a bunch of screenshots and links to the patch notes for previous updates. There's a lot that they've added in just to make it a lot smoother, but most notably, there's a recent update that they did that fixed 2 major gripes with this monitor. One is that the zooming is like a lot cleaner. There were like some weird issues when I did the top LCD magnify. That is completely fixed. That's kind of like a side one. One of the main ones is that the gyro overlay for the horizon level is actually pulling from the gyro data from camera, whereas before it was pulling gyro data from the monitor. And I don't know how that got signed off on, because like that is completely useless, because if you're running a Noga arm, like your monitor is not always going to be perfectly level at all times. So that completely made it useless. And at the time you could do gyro data on the built-in LCD screen with the camera gyro, but now the gyro data on the monitor is pulling from the camera. So that's gonna be living on my monitor at all times, because it's nice to be able to see it at a quick glance. I still have my bubble levelers on my top handles and on my wing grips, but it's just a really nice feature that they fixed. don't know why it was the opposite way when they first released it. And then a quick little bonus one is that you could do different frame guides on playback. So that's really nice for when you're doing 16:9 or 1:1 or any other aspect ratio delivery. You can have those on playback. It's super smooth and you don't really leave your clients guessing. And most importantly is that they added in the auto rotate settings. So if you're a current Red owner and you're using this monitor, you'll notice that if you were shooting top down like this, your monitor would flip and then you would have to wiggle it back up, get it reset, and then try to get the angle again, but not go too far. That was one of the most infuriating things about this monitor, and they fixed it. They actually added in settings in the Page OS menu, so it's not even on the Red menu, it's on the Small HD side, and now you can completely turn that off. So now you can tilt and shoot straight down on the ground, or like towards the ground, and not have it rotate at all. That is one, like, I am just so happy with that. And like, I don't know why they didn't have that to begin with, but that just made the monitor so much nicer to work with. And like, it was just really annoying trying to do some top down stuff, doing run and gun, and like having to worry about the monitor flipping. So it's nice to know that they're constantly making these cameras and accessories better and better with firmware updates. And it's just been really nice having it over Wi-Fi. So yeah, with all that combined, how is it to actually use this monitor? And I feel like I've kind of like touched at the broad idea of this monitor. It's super fast, it's snappy to use. I control my camera settings pretty much entirely through that monitor. It's easy to view. There's tons of camera tools. It's embedded in. Like, there's just so many different capabilities in it that just makes operating these Red cameras so much nicer, especially with the Raptor because the LCD screen on the side of the camera. And one of the best things about this monitor is that it frees up that SDI port. With these cameras, SDI protocol is 100% necessary. And if I'm just doing some quick stuff, or like if I'm doing a job that doesn't really require a Red, say it's like more run and gun, I could run this setup and get incredible 6K R3D out of it without really like fussing around with like a camera rig and like being extremely slow. I can turn this camera off and on, swap batteries, like without really having to worry about extra little steps. And it's just made this camera way more versatile than I could ever think it would be. And I knew I'd love the monitor, but man, going from running 3 different cables for a Red to now one tiny little cable has just been such a joy. And it's just been really, really fun to work with. But yeah, one thing I didn't mention is that you can actually tap to focus with this monitor. I don't have any autofocus lenses yet for this camera, maybe with the Z mount if I end up upgrading to that. But that's a cool feature if you're running native lenses. You can set your focus parameters, the focus zones, how big they are. And it's just really nice having just touch capability. Like I can slot my ISO and iris and shutter angle and frame rate and everything pretty much with a couple clicks. Whereas if I were to do it through the actual camera, I have to click menu and then toggle through all these menus to find exactly what I'm looking for. It just makes operating just so smooth. And I'm sure you guys have probably got the picture of it like 10 minutes ago. So yeah, the elephant in the room is that this monitor is expensive, but more importantly, proprietary. I tend to disagree with people saying that this monitor isn't worth it, and it just depends on your workflow. For me, I wasn't really planning on using a different 7-inch across the board. I have a Cine 5 Small HD that I have for my FX3, and I don't plan on using that on my Komodo because, again, the workflow with having 3 different cables or having the lack of camera control if I don't want to pay for the license. I knew that if I were to get into the Red ecosystem, I wanted this monitor because it, again, makes things smoother, quicker, rigging's easier. I sound like a broken record. So because of that, the price tag is justified for me because it makes life a lot easier. Now you can say, well, what about if I got the Cine 7, which is like kind of like the 1-for-1 alternative? Like that would be better because it's cheaper and it's more universal. And while it is more universal, I don't think it's cheaper. Like when you price out the monitor with your SDI cables, your power cables, and the Red control license, like you're looking to be pretty close to that Red cost. And I forget exactly how it breaks down, but I think it might be like dead on or a little bit more. And even still, like you're getting that universal like use case of the monitor and you can use it on any camera that you come across, but like you're not getting like the full workflow benefits that this monitor gives you with the lack of SDI, the lack of power cable. in just the rigging and the nature of how it implements into the camera. I've heard that the small HD red control licenses are a nightmare to work with. I've heard they're laggy and basically borderline useless. And after hearing about that, it's like, dude, I don't want to like have to worry about that. Like just because I wanted a universal system, like then I'd hate it because it's annoying to use on set. Whereas this monitor is snappy and quick and smooth, and it feels like it's a part of the camera. And for me, that's worth every single penny. And yeah, if I end up selling the red at some point, oh well, it helped me make money. It helped me have a nicer time on set and get the job done more efficiently. And it's something that I can rely on. So it 100% really comes down to preference. Like you can go any direction with this. I find value in having this proprietary monitor. Like I'm not gonna use a 7-inch on my FX3. Even if I got an FX6, I wouldn't use the 7-inch. I'm gonna use that small HD Cine 5 on both of those cameras. And like that's the perfect setup for me. I would love a 5-inch for this setup, but they don't have one, so I'm stuck using the 7, and I'd rather have like an issue with the size, but have the benefit of the workflow, because even still, like this monitor isn't that big, and if I'm like running around or like flying with it, it doesn't really get in the way. Like if anything, it's just like a lot nicer to shoot with, and it still packs down decently small, and like you're not really having to carry that much extra stuff for it. So yeah, are there any issues that I found with this monitor outside of the auto rotate issue? The auto rotate was like my #1 most hated thing about this monitor, and I was like pretty bummed about it because it was super annoying for doing like product stuff. But now that they fixed it with the firmware, like I could care less about it. I'm glad that we have it, and I don't have to worry about it ever again. There is this other thing that I noticed for the last year or so, and it's that anytime I toggle my peaking, the image like shifts a bit over, and then it like kind of repeats on the left side. But upon further testing, it seems like it's a red issue, because even on my built-in LCD screen, when I toggle peaking, it'll shift the image over exactly like how it does on my monitor. So I thought it was a monitor issue. It seems like a red issue, like a red Komodo issue. I didn't really see it on the Raptor yet. I haven't really paid attention on the OG, but it's kind of annoying because it like shifts the image over. So you're not really truly seeing exactly what the camera sees. So that just might be a dumb firmware update that needs to happen at some point. Like I guess the RMI cables sometimes feel fragile. I've never had one break, like knock on wood, like nothing's like broken with that. The base has been really solid, running the top panel has been solid. Everything's just been working really, really well. And I guess there's kind of a color shift, but like every monitor has a color shift. That's the bonus of shooting in RAW. I don't know which monitor is true. I could maybe calibrate it. I don't know. That'd be something to look into, but as you can see, I absolutely adore this monitor. I love it so much. I can only recommend it to people who A, are down with the budget and like down to spend that money, and B, are using the Komodo X and Raptor and like don't want to worry about SDI protocol and power cables and SDI. If you're someone that's like old school and doesn't care about that, freaking use whatever monitor you want. But if you're someone like me who's a solo operator and values having a really quick and nimble workflow, it doesn't get much better than this. Like I could even strip it down and like not have the little wing grips and the top handle and stuff. Like this is just so dialed for a monitor, and it's expensive. It's incredible to work with. It makes running wireless video a breeze. But after spending lots of time with it, you tend to forget about the price tag because it is such a joy to work with. I would have been so bummed if I spent the same amount of money on the Cine 7 and had to deal with the constant rigging and the cables and the awful camera control. Like it's just not worth it to me. I do wish there was a 5-inch monitor. Like that would be really cool for certain scenarios, but the 7-inch has been plenty fine. It still feels really nimble on smaller setups, and it feels perfectly big on the bigger rigs. But yeah, I guess the only bummer is that you can't use it with any other cameras. But like if I'm gonna be using an Arri or a Canon or whatever, like I can either use my small HD Cine 5 or rent something else. Like I can figure that out, but this is my main workhorse camera, and I'm kind of alternating between this and the Raptor. So like it hasn't been an issue having to use other monitors. And with my FX3, like I run it without the monitor all the time, or I run the 5-inch. So like that's not a big deal either. But yeah, when you compare this camera kit to different cameras like the FX3 and C70 and C80 and C400 and all that, to get a V-mount battery and a 7-inch monitor with camera control and power and video, like this is significantly cleaner than those cameras. You need 2 to 3 cables for those other cameras, and maybe rods and a V-mount adapter, and some cameras might not have camera control. Like it just really depends on the camera system, and this just has it all. It's again just been such a joy to work with, and yeah, I don't know what else to say. That was a long video. I've been super happy with it. It's been a breath of fresh air from the Cine 5 and 702 Touch. It definitely makes me want to stay in the Red ecosystem, but if not, I don't mind selling it with the kit. Like, it just is what it is. So yeah, if you guys have any questions about the Red monitor or the Komodo X or the Raptor or the Red ecosystem or anything else, feel free to leave those down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.